Hi everyone, Mature Simmer here. So I'm going to be picking up my straw because, as you can see, it's already February, and obviously in March we can plant. And speaking of planting, got a little bit of a dilemma. So, initially, if you recall, when we had the crop rotation mod installed, it was like, well, it's showing weird previous harvest things in the precision farming, which you can see down below, where in my case here it's showing cotton and oat. If you've been watching things, oat is the last thing I did, but you also know I've never planted cotton on this map. The last time I planted cotton was in Seneca, which was 2 maps ago, which was a year or more ago in real time. So certainly isn't the harvest before this one. So looking around a little bit, and I'm gonna go ahead. So I've gone ahead and used that to determine. So I think I'm gonna go with soybeans this time, and let me explain where I'm at. But I want to obviously go ahead here and get going on work so that I'm not losing time. Because time is, as you've seen time and time again, I'm not really trying to be a punster, but, hey, it's working. I lost my train of thought, so that's another thing that happens. But I mean, I know I was talking about kind of what happens, or what I think is happening, or that I would explain. Oh, time. Yes, the fact that if I don't get going, I'm going to run out of time because I'm always grumbling about time. That's where I was going with it. It's the challenge of just going off on tangents, is your brain doesn't always coordinate where the line is going and what you're trying to connect to. Speaking of connecting, let's try to get this snapped. Whoops. Goodness gracious. What is happening aside from the lovely lag? Alright. Let's see. Goody. Gotta love it. Alright. Is this gonna work? Yes. And it's turning. That's the most important part. So it's actually gonna go pick it up. Alright. So yes, won't have time if I don't get moving. And now, therefore, I can sit there and chat with you about what's going on. So, in researching this, I was going out to post a question like, hey, is anybody seeing this? What's going on? And I was going to show the cotton and oat and so forth. But I saw someone then had, is the crop rotation thing going to get disabled or fixed? And then there was explanations that basically kind of indicated, they're monitoring it, they're trying to figure out what is actually happening, and so forth. So the challenge, I think, is if we're, my interpretation of it is, I think it's doing something. I just am not in agreement with what the something was. So they suggested that, hey, if you're doing your crop rotation properly, like, even though it's displaying it wrong, we think it might be working right, and that's the testing they're doing. There's a couple challenges with that, I think, to definitively say, yep, that's what's happening. If you go through the crop rotation on various crops, several crops will have the same score, I guess I'll call it. So like, as you saw, soybeans is 1.10, which is why I'm going to go with soybeans, because in theory it's going to give me a 10% boost on my yield. But there's usually other crops that also have that. So if I go back here, like you can see, sugar beet has it, grass, wheat, barley, you know, everything does. So the only reason I'm thinking of soybeans is I don't need to fertilize a lot, so it's going to, well, you know what, maybe I won't go with soybean. Because I don't mind the fertilizing, and I don't know that I want, well, but the soybeans then don't harvest a lot, so, or yield a lot. They just are paying you quite a bit. So that would work. Alright, so let's just say it's up in the air yet what I'm going to plant. But the concept of what I'm looking at is a variation of what they're talking about. I don't have a doubt that the mod is working. It's doing something. But I think assuming that, because if I remember correctly, I think I've got barley and then oat are my previous ones. And so why am I always do this because I'm usually pulling things out, but no, I need to dump it in here. So let me get that dumping, and then we'll go ahead and look back in there. So my challenge is, you can see, let's just say soybeans. So if I go here and I go barley and oat, all right, in this case it works. Let's see, wheat, similar, but the numbers are different. Like it showed barley was at 115 because of the oat and whatever. You know, so this is the challenge. Like, let's see if I do canola, but now change this to cotton. See, instead of 115 that it was with barley, it's 110. So it's like, you know, there is a difference, because in either case the result was going to be poor one way or the other, because what I was going to point out was, see, I've changed the sequence. I've made it barley and oat instead of cotton and oat, but I'm getting the same results. So it's like testing it is, I'm not sure how you would do that. Unless you're able to like look back at the XML somewhere, but I would assume the XML is showing what I'm seeing in precision farming. So if I'm looking at things and pulling it apart, I think what I would get is that I planted cotton and oat. So that's kind of my thought, and my argument back was, I think it's working, but I think it would be more proper to use the wrong crops in our rotation window to figure out what to do next, because that's probably what the mod is doing. To think that the mod is accurately tracking our crops somewhere else but not displaying them properly seems, you know, if you go kind of to Occam's razor, which I believe guides us to the simplest solution with the least number of hoops and things you need to jump through to make occur, is likely what's occurring. You know, so when I think people do that to try to figure out, in essence, somewhat of a probability type thing of, yeah, the likelihood that this happened and this is how we got here. The less randomness and the less things that change occur is more likely. Shoot, I was worried about that. Sorry, I'm trying to set this. Alright, hopefully that'll work. Put this back down. There we go. Hopefully we're not leaving any. We're not. Alright. So it basically, you know, the argument of that theory, or whatever you want to call it, I don't know, I'm trying to think of what the right word is for it, but I'm not sure it's that, is the simpler something is to happen, like the more straightforward the explanation is, the more likely that's what's going on, as opposed to thinking, well, yeah, the comet crashed into the asteroid and that is why it's raining today, versus evaporation happened and it's raining today. Like, one of those things is a simpler process to get there, and therefore it's probably the more likely one if you don't know what's really making it rain today. Similarly, if I don't know what's running my crop rotation, assuming that there's some hidden set of variables that is storing things correctly, it's probably a bigger leap than just taking things at face value and seeing it thinks I planted cotton and oat, and so therefore when I plant my next crop, it's going to give me that benefit based on what it's displaying versus on what it's holding in some secret bins. So I'm going to kind of act on a part of that decision, and that part is I think it's doing something, because otherwise the mod's doing nothing, which at that point means I'm back in the same position I was at, plant whatever the heck I want, and it's not going to matter. But if it is doing something, it's more likely the something it's doing is with what it's displaying. So that's why I'm acting on cotton and oat, even though I know I didn't plant cotton and oat. Because, as you've seen, I do get different values potentially, and rather than testing, well, I think I did barley and oat, and it thinks I did cotton and oat, and I want to plant this crop, say soybean, let me see if soybean changes between those two. If it doesn't, then it's probably easier to just say, yeah, whatever, because however it's screwed up, the result would be the same. But if it's different, I think erring on the side of it's remembering your rotation properly when it's not displaying it properly is a bridge too far. So I'm going to agree to disagree in this case and say, given the fact that I've coded a few things myself, you don't have data stored just in random things that you don't even create as a developer. So the fact that the data it's displaying, like it's clearly pulling that from variables that exist versus variables I can't prove exist, because in theory we're assuming they're hidden and we can't see them and they're not displaying right. So I think I've made myself clear of where I stand on that. So I'm going to go ahead and make a selection based on cotton and oat, because that's what it thinks I have. The thing that is an unknown is, like, when I put the seed in the ground, is that when it's in essence calculating the yield, or does it finally calculate the yield when I pull it out of the ground? So probably to do my own view and testing of this, as that we try to figure out as a community if this is going to stay or not. What I probably need to do is then, just before I harvest, I need to see what it's telling me, and then hope that I'm getting, that it's that. My issue is, I'm assuming once I plant, it's no longer going to say cotton and oat. It's going to say whatever it's going to say, because at this point, what it seems to be doing is it knows the crop you just did. It just doesn't know the crop you did before properly. So what I'm expecting to see is that I'm not going to see oat as, it's not going to say oat and then whatever I plant, which is what I would expect it to say at that point. It's going to say some random thing and then whatever I'm getting ready to harvest. So that is what I'm thinking I'm going to see. And, in that case, we go back to the question I have is, am I getting the bonus? So let's say it's this 10% if I do soybeans or if I do some of the grains. And I think I'll probably end up doing some of the grains. Well, see, the benefit of soybeans is it doesn't use a lot of seed, and it doesn't use a lot of fertilizer. So it's not going to cost me much to put soybeans in is going to be my best bet to make a good amount of money, and given the whole uncertainty on taxes and if I can survive that, that's partially what's leaning me down there. Like the fact that it's using less supplies, it's going to mean I need to refill supplies less often, and so therefore I will save time, which goes back to kind of that initial thought. So, and yeah, I mean, when I really was like hemming and hawing, like, well, wait, it's the same, maybe I should do it. It's not like I need a grain. I don't need more straw next year. You know, we went through that the first time, but now if I kind of keep up on it like I am here, we're going to do okay. Because at this point, I think again, I'm talking, so I'm not sure I'm remembering correctly, but I think I went over there twice now. Because I was going over there when I went in wrong, and then I came around and went in right this time, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Alright, so now I'm going to head back to the far end, because that's ultimately what I wanted to do, but I forgot, oh, I have a header row along the top here, so I wanted to just snag that up before I was doing other things. But if I work toward the silo, it's just going to go quicker if I do that. So yeah, so I may end up doing soybean just because the throughput's going to be the same, and it just makes more sense, I think. Alright, so we're gonna, whoops, I hit the wrong button. Now I want to go that way, so I want to line this up. But yeah, the problem is when I have these nodules that they, oh shoot. Didn't put my header down because I was running over. Obviously I can move a lot faster with it up. Or not my header, my pickup head is what it really is. And so I went through and wasted time and didn't get what I expected. Alright, so now I should be okay. Now it should pick everything up. I shouldn't leave anything on the field. I'll get myself to 50,000, and this will be 150,000. And I think I was getting really close to 1 million or whatever off the field, and so this should put me over 2 million again. And basically, as I start getting near 1 million, if I plant a crop then to do straw like I did, I'll kind of stay ahead of it. And I won't get to the point where if I run it all the way down, that suddenly I need to do 2 in a row, which was a challenge, because back to my mortal enemy, time, it just creates 2 harvests that require a lot of time. So part of the other reason I'm looking at making that decision is we did get an announcement for generational farming. We didn't get a date, but we got the move in generational farming to the next generation will happen sometime in July, which is a couple days away. And therefore, I know that's coming in kind of the next cycle. And so if I can keep things simple in the non-generational farming area, which it's just per chance lining up for that, because obviously I didn't know this when I decided to just do hay and to have straw out on the field. But this is all lining up well, because if I just do something simple here, I can focus mental energy and, again, time over in generational farming to think about things, because I mean, really the only decision I should have to really make is, I guess there will be several, because I mean I have to figure out which equipment I'm taking, but I'm sure it'll be the same equipment I took, because that's kind of was the plan of making it simple and not having to make different choices each generation. That's one of the benefits of sticking with grass. But obviously once we know what map we're going on to, which we have not been told that, then it's kind of looking at that and figuring out where I'd like to end up, similar to what I did when we were going to Northwest Mecklenburg, and said, hey, I would, if I can, I'd love to get this spot, because with what I'm doing, that puts me very close to my sell point. And I have enjoyed where I'm at there, because while, you know, there's always that trade-off. I'm having to run up to the store, yes, which is a long, long way away, because I'm almost as far away as I possibly can be. I think the only way I could make it worse is if I moved over to the east some and ended up in that corner, southeast corner of the map. That would be longer. But other than that, I'm pretty close to one of the longest locations away. So every time I need to lease something or get fuel, I have to drive that long, long distance, which is 5 to 10 minutes one way. So it takes a while. But that's better than doing that 30 times for selling silage, for example, which is obviously the alternative. You know, in the map we're on, I'm in good shape because I got a pretty productive field in a great location. You know, what I might find later in another map is, okay, I'll be close to the sell point, but it's going to be really bad ground. And I still think that's going to be the better choice, because having a higher yield and then also being further away, it's like a double whammy. I'd kind of be, you know, making myself take more trips because I have more silage, but now I'm far away. Now again, you know, there's some things I can do there, like maybe I don't get the field right across the street like I did now. I get a field, you know, that is a minute away or something, but has 25% more throughput. Like, that might be the best option I've got. Let's see. Ooh, we got lucky. The bump wasn't that big. So I try when I harvest to kind of let the harvester slowly eke along at the end. The new thing I've done, which I don't know that I showed in the harvest video, I basically run 2 rows. So what I'm usually doing is I'm leaving the truck down here so that I can avoid the hill climb that I do otherwise, because otherwise it's like two and some fraction of a row before the harvester gets filled. And so I tend to kind of ping pong between the ends of the field. So sometimes I'm at the north end, sometimes the next time I'm at the south end. So I'm taking more time to drive the truck regardless, but then every other time I'm going up this big hill as well, which slows down, you know, probably adds 30 seconds to a minute of the truck struggling up the hill, especially once I start getting full. So instead, what I do is I just keep it down at one end and just go 2 rows, which gets me to at least 60%, usually 70% or more. You know, but as that field thins over on the eastern end, the rows are shorter, so I get less, obviously, because there's just less crop there and so forth. But I think on the short end, on the east side, I was still getting like 65 to 67% when I did those 2 rows. And so it takes more than 4 harvester unloads, the active unloading, to do that. Where normally, if I fill it, it's 4 and a tiny bit more, and I'm probably doing more like 6 before I am filling everything, because again, I'm not getting 18,000 or whatever it is. I'm getting 14 or 15,000 liters. So over 3 or 4 of those, obviously we're losing 10,000 liters of yield that we would have in that harvester. So but anyway, as I get near the end, so most of the ends of these rows are going to be down here at the bottom, and So as we drive through here to get back to that row where I was at, trying to recall, where did I come from? Like, I can't see my tracks, so I assume I'm up here, but you can kind of see I don't really have any bulbous ends there, so I should be okay in not having to play around at the end, which once again saves time. Can you figure out my most important decision point in almost any decision I make in Farming Simulator? I'll give you one guess, and I bet you'll get it right. Time. Good job. So yeah, so obviously I think up at this end I had, at the start of that row I had it up there, but that was again just because of how I ran things and where the truck was. So I did it for the first load, but then as I moved across the field, I ended up down at the bottom, and then that just basically lets me make a tiny little S-curve with my truck along the bottom, because basically I'm lined up north-south with the truck, and then I need to be lined up north-south again, but I need to move the truck over, so I just, make a U-turn. And now I'm facing the other way, and then, make a U-turn facing the other way, and just always end up north-south to unload, and it works. Plus it also guarantees that I'm not having to move the harvester to allow someplace for the truck to pull up that doesn't damage crop, because I can just basically, as I'm doing it every 2 rows, I'm just always at the point where the pipe is facing out, and I'm good to go. I still really miss pipes that I can angle. That was so much fun in FS19, but alas, it has not come back to any harvester that I have come across in FS22. Nobody has chosen to re-implement that. But given the fact that we had so many people who had played 3,000 hours of Farming Simulator, and when I showed them how to angle the pipe on the harvester I had, their head exploded because they didn't know you could do that. My likelihood is it's probably that one modder who created that case harvester that had that made that decision, and maybe that modder's not operating anymore in the FS22 universe, and so that ancient wisdom has died with them. It's kind of like a civilization having to start over with no writings. So we're back again to my favorite Giants plea: stop releasing new versions of Farming Simulator and let us use mods forever, because otherwise you have people like me who are upset that I can't do something I was able to do in a previous version of your game because it hasn't come back now, coming on 2 years on from when you forced us to leave what we were quite happy with already. Anyway, we've heard that enough. If people, there's videos on the channel about it, what I suggest they do and so forth, but we'll see. I'm still hopeful. They keep doing, they just announced the premium expansion, which adds new crops, it adds a bunch of new equipment, new stuff, new productions. So I'm still hopeful. They're on track. There's nothing that shows that, oh, because of this they have to come out with a new game. They're showing me exactly what I think. They can modify the game pretty substantially without giving us a new game, and just charging accordingly for it. They're, for folks who don't have it, they're charging $20. It's 40% of what a full game would be, and if they do that every year, they get 120% of what a new game would be, which means they get more money than they would get if they released a new game. So, and they eliminate all kinds of downsides. So please, 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 Giants, think about it, make the right decision, and go that route. Because I think, again, this kind of started with coding and programming, with the discussion about the crop rotation, and we're probably now going to end with that. Is, there's very few things that require a full rewrite or a new version of an entire system. You know, Microsoft isn't necessarily giving us new versions of Office all the time or something now that we're on 365. They're just enhancing the product. Because guess what? A word processor can process words, and you don't need to start from ground zero to have it do that. Similarly, a farming simulator can simulate farming without starting over. Maybe worth some thought. And I get there's probably a little bit of the financial angle that if you don't come out with a new game on console, you're foregoing revenue there. But I don't care about console. I'm not on console. You want to come out with new versions for console, have at it. I'm sure you could keep them compatible with the PC version that you don't change, and that you just keep expanding, and that has the same feature set. But I know it would be confusing to people because they're like, I'm connecting with someone on Farming Simulator 22, and I'm on Farming Simulator 58. What do I do? But, you know, hey, I don't know. I'm not sure I'll be around for Farming Simulator 58, but, so, you know, what, 35 years from now? Maybe. Be pretty old, but, you know, I'm already a mature simmer. At that point, I would absolutely be snugly in the Geriatric Simmer section of the store. But, you know, this is a fun game. It's easy enough to play. It's not like it's a first-person shooter that requires super fast reaction time, so if things, you know, start slowing down with my ability to do things, I could probably keep doing this one. You know, I might have to stop iRacing. I might not be able to do the golf swing anymore and get good timing or whatever, but running up and down the field, I could probably do that while I'm pretty old. We'll see. But, anyway. So yeah, I don't think there's any technical reason things need to be, that a new game needs to be presented, so. Because, you know, I think the biggest argument people have had is, well, productions. Okay, maybe. It's just still a coding thing. They're adding new productions now. I get that means the base production thing is there, but yeah, it would have been a big expansion. Do it as a, you know, ultra premium expansion and charge $30 for it instead of 20 because you're introducing earth-shatteringly new functionality. But there's ways to do it without destroying the mod path and the map, the map path, which maps, I guess, are just mods when we get down to it. But anyway, so that's where we're at. So you know what I'm doing with crop rotation, what I'm thinking about, what I'm wrestling with. You know, generational farming. We're going to be moving in July, so I've got to collect the rest of this straw. I'm pretty sure I'll get around, you know, over 2 million at some point. It doesn't really matter what I get. The point is I'm getting more straw, and you know, I'll certainly check my barn, I'll check my slurry, and if I have time, I'll top those off, and as is necessary. But it's kind of that same old thing. But just wanted to get you another episode as I do another significant block of work here. And I have now done that, so I'm going to let you go, and I will see you next time.